validate and verify we are now live on SMUG as well.
We sure are.
Beautiful. All right. So you're going to post your comments and your questions wherever that we've got events on both the page and SMUG, and we have the live stream in both places as well. So we'll be monitoring all of that. So don't worry about where you think you might need to post your comments. Feel free to do so throughout the show. And we will be as succinct as we can, but we want to answer your questions as well. We've got a number of things to talk about. The release, man, we had a big release. The amount of stuff that was on it, the amount of testing that was done, the amount of time that we had to say, whoa, just kidding, internally. And then as a testament to our automated test processes, they caught a couple things right before we went out, and then we didn't. And then we released, and it was pretty quiet. Like, we had a couple little things, and Adam and the team were on it like really fast, but for the most part, it was good. Adam, let's talk about what we're talking about today. Were we leading it off with the release? Because that's kind of where I frame this.
We absolutely are leading it off with the release. Yeah. And if you guys caught the last Ask SMUG Live, we actually went pretty deep into some of the things that came out in this. We had some features, we had some things like that when Mary actually did a walkthrough kind of those. So Asher will post the link to that just to make sure you guys all kind of have that. But yeah, let's just briefly go through these. And again, like, watch that video. You guys can see kind of what's new. But like Joe's talking about, we definitely wanted to get this out last week, ran into a couple of things. So happy to get this release out, and it was relatively smooth. We had a thing with some Stripe users that we got resolved quickly. This is a massive release, a ton of changes on the back end. I think Joe talked about that a little bit in one of the SMUG posts from today. Just a ton of back end changes and reworking things and getting prepped for ServiceMonster Pay, and also prepping for enhancing Stripe and Authorize.net in the future as well. So all of that's kind of there. The groundwork has been laid. We are going to be doing some production QA validation. There's a two-step process we have to go through before ServiceMonster Pay can be enabled. So we're starting that step now. We have to go through some tests in the production environment. So that's what we are working on now. There's a couple other things, smaller things that will also be in that release as well. So keep an eye on those release notes. And if you guys aren't familiar, I always want to take the time to mention this, getting to the release notes. So there are multiple ways. Well, we try to give you guys as many points of access as possible. When we release something new, the what's new section on that home dashboard will show that. There'll be a link that goes out to the latest release notes. But there's even an easier way if you guys ever want to check if there's release notes. If you go to the user dropdown, so like up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen where your little portrait is, you click on that, there's a what's new option. If you hit that, it'll always take you to our release notes, and you can see if there's been something new. It's important to note too that we bundle our release notes by major release, and then there's a bunch of sub releases within there. So as you scroll through, you'll see sub releases that come out after the fact, and so on and so forth. So just want to kind of mention that, because we can't take the time in these Ask events to go through every little thing that got updated. So we want to make sure you guys are as up to date as possible and seeing what's new in the app. So in terms of just a really quick rundown of some of the features, like I said, go watch that previous video if you want kind of a walkthrough, but we added the ability to have dialogues come up directly in reports for appointments. And what I mean by dialogue, if you guys aren't familiar, it's the little screen that pops up, kind of think like a pop-up window when you're looking at the appointment, for example, or maybe you're editing or adding a new payment. We call them modals or dialogues. It's basically a little pop-up that comes up and you can't do anything behind that, right? So that's what I mean when I reference that. And what this I was actually talking to a user, which led to this addition. They were making quite a few updates daily to the time logs for their technicians, because they had to make sure their time logs were accurate, because they deal with different services. So they have to make sure that the time spent on each of those is taxed accordingly. And so they were jumping in that report, going to the order page, then to the appointment history, then into the appointment, then making the update, and then going back. And so it's very, very convoluted steps for them. And so find a way to get this in. We also are prepped to do the same thing with the payment dialogue. So on reports where that makes sense, that'll be on there. But now you can directly open that appointment little dialogue directly from those reports. So you can make edits to time logs and things as needed without having to jump around. So huge time saver. The big one a lot of you guys probably noticed right away is the email editor has been updated. Some of the UI has been cleaned up a little bit, but most importantly, you can now search for your email templates. So this is a bigger problem for those who have just numerous email templates to kind of sort through. But also, I do want to apologize for whoever's doing the lawn work out here. I wish I could mute them, but here we are. But yeah, now you can search for those templates, and we've paved the way for future updates on that screen as well. So some filtering capabilities and other things we have ideas for. So employee notifications. This is one that we wanted to screen share just so it was kind of better understood. But basically, the notifications that get sent to an employee when their schedule changes, or if you can set it to all schedule changes if you're an operations manager or something like that. But now it only keys off of when the start time has changed. So if you, for example, schedule something from 9 to 12, and then the office staff adjust it to 9 to 11:30, and then 9 to 11:15, and then 9 back to 12:30. The previous system would notify you for all three of those changes. And we made it so that only if the start time changes will you get the actual text or email notification. Because really, in terms of what the employee needs to know right away is when the start times are. They can look at their schedule via the app or the route packets or however you have in your system to know exactly how long each job is expected to take, right? And it was incredibly spammy. And so a lot of users weren't actually using it because it was sending too many messages. So we hope that that helps. Another big one, we've already had someone comment in SMUG, and I appreciate that. The hover pop-up on the schedule is now much more obvious if an invoice is paid or unpaid. So as you hover over that, it's pretty much the first thing that you'll see. So pretty obvious there. And the big one, the batch update for products and services. We actually had a comment in SMUG already about this as well. So again, always great to hear that. We like to hear when we have something that actually benefits you guys. That's our whole goal, right? But you can now go into your products and services, and you can select multiple of them at a time to batch update, and then you can select which of those items you want to update. So again, just a quick rundown. There are tons of other little things that got updated here, both bug fixes and smaller feature stuff. Go ahead and check out the release notes. And if you want to see how some of those things work in action, like I said, that link that Asher posted will have those in there, and you can watch Mary kind of walk through. So, and before we move on to mobile, which is the next thing, because there's exciting things going on mobile's end as well. I mentioned that this is kind of there's a production QA validation for SMP. So we are right on the precipice of this being out. I don't want to give an exact day, just in case anything comes up in the validation process, because we're basically at the whim of this, our partner, right? So if they find anything that they want us to fix, we're going to have to fix that. But we're in the final steps, right? So if any of you guys are listening to this in the next week or so, be on the lookout. It's going to be some exciting things coming out of the pipeline.
The final step, right, is us being our own consumer and then making sure that all the T's and I's are dotted and crossed.
Yep.
And so right now we're kind of in a ghost mode where a ServiceMonster account we've created for processing in production all of this stuff and running real charges and so forth. And then once we've got a thumbs up that they have seen everything they like, then we can unghost it with the next release, hopefully next week, if everything goes perfect. If they come back and say, no, you've got form subsection 01, I mean, we connect a lot of moving pieces, and the application to get in is a standard application that you would expect for a financial relationship, right? So lots of little things in there. And then we've got the added curveball of supporting both Canada and US, which has different rules. And so we've got to make sure that our rules in both hit. And also my insistence upon ACH effectively being able to take payment from those checks on site, or later, without having necessarily to go down to the bank all the time, and plug that into your system, even for all kinds of fun stuff. So 4 levels of certification there, right? Because we have the electronics funds transfer in some way, we've got the credit card exchange in some way, both for Canada and US. So once we run through everything and they all look good, then it'll be available to you. but some of the benefits are already available to them, are they not, Adam? Like being able to save a credit card, for instance.
The all the credit card stuff is tied to ServiceMonster Pay. So everything that we're updating on
Gotcha.
that end, the payment methods, everything's tied to ServiceMonster Pay. Stripe and Authorize, they're able to save those cards on file, but they can't use them on mobile. And they also can't manage them directly in ServiceMonster.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, we've got yeah. So we've got a little bit of cleanup there to do, but the spearhead there is ServiceMonster Pay will have all of those features out of the gate.
Yeah, and I'll go over. I wanted to wait until everything was out, and our next Ask Smug event, we'll just spend a huge chunk of time. We'll go through everything. So if any of you guys are interested in hopping on there, you want, or if you're curious, make sure you guys make the next event, because I'll go through all the new features. I'll talk about everything that you can possibly set up as far as auto charging with contracts, managing your credit cards or your bank accounts on file for the direct debits. Setting defaults so you can have easier process, which card to use, right? That's going to default to when you make payments, and then you can also use those saved cards on file out on the mobile app. So that was a big thing we wanted to make sure got in this as well. So, like Joe said, there's still some cleanup on Stripe and Authorize that has to happen. Some of it minor, some of it more major. But it's a lot of back end stuff that you guys wouldn't want to necessarily hear all the nitty-gritty on. So, so yeah, that's kind of what's coming down the line, and we're excited to get those out to you. And we're going to have help documentation and everything, so you guys can kind of see how that process works, and so on and so forth. So everything's ready right out of the gate for you guys. In terms of mobile release, 1.4.5 is in the rollout process. We've talked about this numerous times before. Whenever we do a release, we always start on the Android side, because iOS unfortunately doesn't allow this. But we do kind of a staged rollout where we start with 10% of Android users, make sure nothing critical broke, there aren't any crashes or issues with logging in, or things like that might come up. And then we slowly expand that throughout the week. So we're 50% right now for Android. We're going to let that sit over the weekend. More and more people are getting our stability scores are higher than they've been in previous releases. So everything's looking great. We're going to take a look at that on Monday, and should be fully released next week, barring something catastrophic that hasn't been caught yet. So excited to get that out to you. That's going to have all of the SM Pay features in the back end. Obviously, you won't be able to see those unless you have ServiceMonster Pay, which is coming. But there's also just a bunch of bug fixes and things like that. We mentioned this last episode, but I'll touch base. There are multiple issues with the toolbar settings, sometimes either not saving or resetting. And so all of that has been resolved. The GPS issues where some users weren't able to clock in and out, that's been resolved. There was an issue where sending a text via ServiceMonster was causing a crash. That's been resolved. There were some less common crashes that are kind of sporadic that have been resolved. And like I said, that ServiceMonster Pay functionality is tied in there as well. So we'll have full release notes out on the mobile side as well. It's that same location that I mentioned before. You can basically toggle between the mobile and the desktop releases. So, and the other thing I wanted to address, again, we talked about this. It's just been a couple of weeks. Last month was a little bit weird for the Ask Smug, so it hasn't been quite as much time between events as normal. But I did want to reiterate too that we have plans. There have been a couple of mobile users who have had larger issues involving a couple of different things. Some of them have been resolved, but we're going to be working hand in hand with them to kind of go into some deeper tools that we can potentially use that we don't necessarily want to do on the full kind of network, so to speak, so that we're not bogging down, slowing anything down like that. But we're going to be working hand in hand with them to find and squash these issues over the next couple of months now that this release is out. If you have further questions about that, go ahead and shoot a thing here in the chat, or we talk about it in the previous episode. So yeah, I think those are the big things. Before I hop into Smug, Joe, I think there's one thing we should probably mention is that there's an absence on this particular event. Maybe people are asking about that. So
yeah, Mary, she was with us for 2 years, and she gave her notice a couple weeks ago. And we're sad to see her go. She did some incredible work here at ServiceMonster in those 2 years. Our current help system, the cleanup. You remember, Adam? It was all over the place. It was every you had to train out of it. It was everywhere.
Yeah.
It was nuts. And so not only just the consolidation to one unified system and her ability to record videos and then the in-app videos, but just the structure and overall and her writing and competency on the product and collaboration. So she will be missed. She's moving on to greener pastures. She's going to go teach kids about science. And if you know anything about me, you know I'm all about the science, especially teaching kids about science, critical thinking, and philosophy. So I fully support her endeavor to go teach kids about science. Um, so yeah, but now we're trying to find a replacement for her. And as I always say, hire slow. So we'll probably go through a few rounds. I've been encouraged by the people that have applied, but no one's really hit all the Venn diagram for me yet. So we're going to continue that hunt over time. So yes, Mary will be missed. You will no longer see her face being produced. I'm still sure you run across Stephanie videos occasionally, right? And that's Stephanie. It took us almost a year, 6 months to replace Stephanie, right? Because we had some weirdness in the middle there. But anyway, sad to see her go. She will be replaced. I think your help content can chill for a minute, right? We're going to make some changes, of course, and we'll be adding help content, and we'll be bringing that person on as quickly as possible. So we'll be able to plug that hole. Training and whatnot, of course, is happening from the support team. So any training that she did there will be covered. So I don't know if you guys run into her in the support lines anymore for the SMUG community, right? You guys should be baked in a little bit more. But yeah. So anyway,
probably some
bye,
members
Mary.
who have been trained by her, but yeah, no, not necessarily in day to day. But yeah, no, she was great. Obviously, wanted to kind of give her a send off because you guys have maybe gotten used to seeing her here or in those help videos. But she set us up in a great place. Like ServiceMonster is better off at this point.
No question.
Hopefully, she has a good time at her next opportunity. So
yeah, and it's going to be hard to replace her for sure.
Yeah,
harder. They get harder every time because we get upgrades, which means now we got to meet the new standard.
Right. No, she was fantastic. So
yeah.
Okay. Was there anything you wanted to add, Joe, before we jump into some SMUG stuff?
No, I think that's the behind the scenes update, as it were. I mean, we're excited by these releases. We're excited for ServiceMonster Pay. We're really excited about some of the mobile changes that you guys will be seeing. Yeah. Moving on.
All right. So first SMUG post is from a couple of days ago by David. He was asking about, I see a text icon on the mobile app, but how do you activate it? And he got various help in the actual channel there. So I always appreciate guys jumping in. Brenda on our support team answered some things as well, but some of you guys were really quick to jump in there, and I appreciate that. But basically, there is an option on any phone number that gets input into the system that is labeled as can text. And if that's checked, you can send a text message either from the mobile app or from desktop. It's actually fairly simple to check that in. And when you're creating new accounts, it's actually on by default if you add a mobile number. But if you have to maybe if you had a data import or if you've got older data that hasn't had that, toggle swapped, all you have to do is go into the account, hit the little can text button and hit save. You can also do this on mobile. You can go into an account, hit the edit account button, and for each of the phone numbers, that option is there as well. So if you ever have issues kind of texting a number directly, that's most likely the first place to start. The next one came in from Robin, and I really like this one because there was some good kind of discussion about it, and it also segues into ServiceMonster Pay. So they're asking if anyone's figured out a secure way to collect credit cards at a time of booking and store them securely so they can run them once the job is done without a preliminary test charge. So the answer, which Paul actually jumped on too, which means he's paying attention to the show. So thanks, Paul. But with ServiceMonster Pay, that is one of the big new features, is that the manage credit card options, we basically have a section on the accounts now that allows you to add credit cards or bank accounts if you want to do the direct debit without a charge. There's a validation process that the backend will do to make sure that it's a valid card or bank and routing number. That's all of that will handle. And then when you want to go run a charge, it will then be there in the system and you can utilize that. If you want to, run a test charge or maybe have like a holding fee, Matt, one of the users, offered kind of a great kind of process that they use where they have a simple $25 deposit basically to secure the time slot and get on the schedule. And then that gets the card on file currently, and then they charge that after the fact. So they have kind of a nice process there. They walk through that. So if you want to use that option, that exists, and ServiceMonster Pay will also make that even easier now because the office can get that on hand ahead of time. The next one came from Ryan. They do weekly work for a customer, but they want to be billed monthly. And then what's the best way to accomplish that? A couple of users jumped in, Mary Lynn and Joel. Appreciate the input there. One of the options is a contract, which I'll talk about here in just a sec. And the other option is to just do a billing statement. Billing statement section is, I honestly, I was talking about this in a video, Joe. I think billing statements might be one of the easiest things you can do in our system. You literally go to the billing statement section.
It's one of the unsung heroes because people don't, but we just lifted that right out of the best version that QuickBooks did. So now our online version of billing statements has been better than QuickBooks online version of billing statements since QuickBooks Online came out, because we modeled it after QuickBooks Desktop. So weird, but true.
Yeah, all you have to do, if you go in, maybe I should just screen share this and show this. Give me just a second here. It might be a little bit easier.
That's one of those things I take for granted, like thinking everybody does it. Or, there's all kinds of areas in the app I find later that people are like, what?
Right.
What? I'm like, what do you mean? How can this not be part of your normal day to day? Because I do other shit with my day. It's like, okay, yes. Sorry, that makes sense.
Yep. Okay. So let's share this. I've never done this on, hopefully everything's working correct. Are we good?
Looks good.
So yeah, you just need to go to the accounts section here on the left-hand side. So I'm going to open this up, and there's a billing section here. And then you can see all the previous billing statements I've generated in my test account here. But if you just go and just add a billing statement, you can basically do this to be kind of all-encompassing, a time range, specific account. You can customize this however you need, but just what the statement date's going to be. And then you can do a statement period, like I just mentioned. So you can do, for the month of April, for example, or you can just say, hey, everyone who owes me money. And if you do that, then you can kind of exclude a couple of things here. If they're only maybe a certain amount of time past due, exclude to have a credit balance, yada, yada, yada. And then here you can go one step further. Like I said, you can target a specific account type or just a specific account in general. You can say, hey, I just want to make a billing statement for Bob, right? And then the next thing, the nice little thing, and this might help in this particular instance, is you can generate just the billing statement, which will just have basically like, hey, they have this invoice for this amount, and it's all kind of bundled together, and then you have a total, right? So there's multiple invoices. You can also send each of those individual invoices. You can have a billing statement and each of those invoices attached for that particular user, and it all generates in one PDF. So just basically is paged, starts with the billing statement and then each of those invoices underneath it. So, and then you can either create the PDF to print them off, or you can email those. So if you want to do everything online, you can email that. But if you're mailing it, you can obviously do the PDF to print. And so honestly, if you have good processes in place, you can just do that on a weekly, monthly, whatever basis whenever you're doing your billing. Really easy to generate, and you can send that off, and you can have multiple invoices tied to that billing statement, and they just know what their total is, right? If you want to automate that, though, don't know what happened to my voice there, but we'll just kind of move past that. You can create a contract. So the contract system, you can go to just the contracts list on the account page here, but you can go into any test account overall. You can kind of go into a contract tab there, but you can basically come into here. You can create, I'll just use this as an example. You can create a contract. And right now, currently the only option you guys have is bill only. We have auto charge in the system. If you try to select it, it's only available if you use ServiceMonster Pay. Again, this is all just kind of the prep work for ServiceMonster Pay coming out. But basically, you just set when that contract's going to start. If it has an end date, or if it's going to run in perpetuity, you don't have to put an end date if you don't want to. And then what day of the month are they being charged? And then you choose monthly, quarterly, biannually, or annually. Right now, these are the only options. There was actually a question in SMUG about this. I think it was Eric, which is a great question. It's something we want to add. About adding weekly options and biweekly options and things like that. And the answer is that we want to. We just have to overhaul the UI, because the basic UI that we were working with here is all based on the month. And so you can see kind of like, it's working on assuming only there's one payment on each month. So we have to kind of overhaul the UI. There's some other changes we want to make here as well. So that is something that we want to have in the future in case that's a concern as you're going through here. But then from here, you can add the order memo. So this is actually new, by the way, in case the longtime users might be curious about this. You can actually put this in. This ties to the order memo that's on the invoice. So you can put in here, maybe specific requests, line items, things like that. Again, we don't allow you to create the line items for each automatic billing invoice. It just has basically a contract amount of $200 or whatever it might be. So this is going to be a way for you to expand to explain what that invoice was for and so forth. And each of these invoices that's created is shown here. I don't think I explained it that well. So if you have questions, feel free to hit us in the chat there. And then just some general notes. But basically what you do is you create an email template that gets sent out automatically. And you choose what the order invoice is going to look like. And you then set it up to, so if this is monthly, for example, on the 17th of each month, it would then run this one's already ended, by the way. That's why there's no next billing date. But every time it runs, it would then generate this bill. And so what it'll do is it'll create that billing statement along with the invoice. If you guys remember the page we were just on, and they will generate and send out that email with the template that you selected. And you can also, if you have a payment provider, so Stripe, Authorize.net, or soon to be SMPay, you can also then have an email template that has that payment link and they can pay that online. So that is also new in this release. So you can generate that way. And a lot of you guys, though, with SMPay, you're going to want to just use auto charge, and that'll just, take the charge right then and there, and you won't have to worry about billing them. So even better. Those are both options that exist in the system. And so kind of wanted to just get that out there if you guys weren't aware about the contracts or weren't aware about billing statements. Because again, a lot of you guys might just be going into each order individually and sending out emails, and there's a better way potentially. So last one came in from Jamie. And Jamie was asking, does anyone use the call feature in ServiceMonster on desktop to do checkbacks with customers? Can you keep track of the amount of people called in a day, when they were called, et cetera? And does it show in your reports? And so the answer is sort of. Most of that you can, you can kind of get some of that. And I actually asked her for some feedback, maybe potentially how we can improve it. But there are a couple of options, right? You can go to a report called user activity. The report is all about activities in general. And then you can filter on things like the user themselves, maybe the activity type, calls versus tasks, for example. And you can also by status. So if it's pending, if it's complete, so on. So you can filter on, you can show everything. You can look at that and that'll show you all the activities created and by user and so on and so forth. So if that's what you need,
have to create those activities.
Correct.
Just so we're clear. Yeah.
So maybe the other thing to include then too is that you can have drip campaigns set up to generate call activities. And maybe that's something that would be interesting. Maybe I can update that post for Jamie there. You can have automated tasks be created, those call activities be created at certain events. And so that's something you can also do to, maybe assign office staff or something like that for a task to complete during the day. So
yeah, or you can auto assign it to an individual or round robin it between a couple individuals. So that's pretty cool. Keep going.
So yeah, the other option is you can just use the grid list. And I actually probably should just share my screen here. Let me just pop that back on. Share screen. You can just use the grid list. So again, if you come back here to the account section, it's where your big activities list is. If you come into here, it defaults to pending activities. But if you click this little view dropdown, we've actually added some new ones a couple of releases ago. I don't remember when this was, but we added some new views, expanded this. You can view all activities, pending, completed. You can filter them down easily here. And then we also have those same options for all and pending for each of the specific activity types. You can also at the bottom see one of the things we added was anything specifically assigned to you. You can also look at these. So, hey, I want to look at myself, my pending calls, my activities, and so on and so forth.
Brilliant.
You can use this list to basically filter off what you might need. So if you went to all activities, you only wanted to look at ones that have been completed, right? You could sort, right, just by clicking the header here. You could sort by that, or more importantly, you could probably just filter by specific day. So Hey, everything that was completed on 5/4, in this case, it was nothing, but you could look at that and you could, then track by, you know, when that was done. So you could see how much was done in a certain day. Right.
Did everybody see him use the filter on the column there? Because I
So
think we brushed by that kind of stuff really fast.
we did. Let's talk about that. So these columns are built kind of like Excel. So if you guys use Excel, you're probably a little bit ahead of the game, but you can expand these columns and shrink them. Maybe there's one that you want a little bit more info. Maybe there's one you just don't really care about as much. You can also click the header to sort, and it's going to do, kind of either alphabetical or chronological. So it'll either sort top to bottom or bottom to top. Just click on those and you can see the little arrow there indicating which one it is. So in this case, it's most recent to last. And if it's blank will always start as well. Anything that's alphabetical will be alphabetized. So boom. The filters themselves are these little filter icons. If you click them, if it's a date column, it'll give you actually a little date picker. If it's a status, you can just, these are just free form text fields. So you can just, for example, in the account name, I could just do a search for test. It's a very specific search for anything that has test in it. So
Contains. Yeah.
Contains. Yep.
Brilliant. Yeah. So I don't know how many people actually know that the power of these grids continues to improve.
Yeah. And I mean, this is getting a little bit into the weeds. I don't know if we've had any questions pop up or not, but you can even go further than this. You can add columns. So over here on the right, there's a little section here where you can turn on and off advanced options. The advanced options has this column selector where you can go through. I can add a bunch of columns. And the activities table is a little bit more limited than maybe like the accounts would be. But
sure,
if any of these are useful for you, the owner name, for example, updated by, updated on, things like this could be useful for you to add to the grid, and you can have them additional columns that show.
And if we're talking about activities, just for a brief second, this isn't the only view that you can, if you actually need to, if you're one of the people who has generated activities assigned to them, then the management board might be something you want to play with.
Yeah, so there's a specific view here. If you can see over here, the grid view and the panel view. If you go to the panel view, this was built so that you could sort of run through your day. So if you had a bunch of calls assigned to you, you could use this to kind of run through your day. And you can always collapse this if you need more space. The general idea is it's giving you an account recap, so you kind of understand who the customer is without having to dive into them. You have some notes for your activity, right? This is your activity section here, so you can fill in your own personal notes or view notes from other agents maybe. You can set kind of, due date, status. You can update things like that. You can maybe show something on the schedule if you wanted. But most importantly, you can make calls directly from here. If you have a soft phone installed or some sort of program installed, you can use like Google Voice, maybe, Skype, anything like that on top of what you guys will most likely have, which is a true soft phone service. A lot of you guys work with like Ring Central or things like that. If you click this phone number, the browser actually picks that up and it says, hey, you want to make a call, and you're going to pick an app. Now, I don't have any apps on mine to select, so I'm not going to, but it's all you have to do is basically pick an app and it would call right from there.
Now, this is a great segue back to the original source of the question. How is call integration working? So Adam talked about the activities, automatic activity generation. Now we've talked about list management and even process management of it's like you think we've planned this out or something. Not really. And now we're here clicking on buttons that interact with soft phones to make outbound calls. So there's many areas in the app where we've put in click to dial. So if you are using a soft phone connection, you're able to connect and it will ring, even your cell phone or whatever, right? I mean, I've been doing this for 2 decades, but you also can do screen pop. Now, in neither case, clicking to dial or someone calls into a specific number and it shows you kind of, hey, the number's ringing. Do you want to go automatically look it up in the global search? Yeah. So we found him. It's Jim Johnson calling. Answer. Okay, cool. In neither of those cases is an activity generated. So when we say call integration, a lot of people will think, oh, integrated to my phone. Can I see what's going on with my phone? And the answer is no. So that's where the ish comes from to the answer to that question.
Yep. Also, just to really briefly show this, the whole idea behind this is you're working through the list and you can see how many of those things you've completed over here on the right. So I could start with Adam Banner here, and then I have my next task, and so on and so forth. But that's there for Jamie. If any of you guys have any feedback on that, if you haven't maybe used it, maybe give it a whirl, and also kind of get that feedback from Jamie, hopefully, and always looking to improve. So
awesome.
That's all I have. Do we have any questions that have popped up? Maybe that got
Kurt
missed.
Ask for next version, next release, which have no idea. We have no idea. We do know what's on deck, and we do know what we're working on. The next closest release after SMP is done, which again we've got another release related to it here next week or so, is going to be the Fill My Schedule upgrades we've been promising you guys for a long time. So we're in kind of our final rounds of QA and polish. And when that's done, we'll have another release. That's likely to be 6.7, isn't it not?
Yep, that'll be 6.7.
So 6.7 will be the next release with Fill My Schedule, self-help, and custom fronts and custom inside. You got custom insides too done, didn't you?
You mean
custom
the
top?
The top content? Yep.
Top content. So hot. That is so good. Okay, so then, because of how resources are managed, right? So right now we're doing a couple different projects. One longer term project, so we're not promising anything on a release date, is what we're calling OBS, our online booking system. It's badass. It's so good. It's so good. But we're not going to talk about it. We don't talk about OBS. We don't talk about OBS. Because I don't want to overpromise on that thing, but it's I'm very happy with where it's at right now. And now Randy and I'm the primary engineer on the project. That's why it's A, taking so long, and B, so badass. So, and then Randy is helping on the back end there. So I'm stealing some of his time. So we are moving forward on that project, and that's the full enchilada, guys. That's the full deal. Then and also simultaneously, I know Adam's really anxious to get SMS built in and separating out some SMTP and SMS pipelines. But we're also pressing on resources for some scheduling updates that you guys are pressing us on, right? So we're balancing that. But those are the two big ones left on the docket, right, Adam? As we're doing this project management live.
And it's actually part of the reason that we were really interested in the Chirp integration is that you guys have the capabilities now with that integration to do some of those really cool things on the SMS front.
Seriously.
To just, have a little bit of a pressure relief.
Totally worth it too. Totally worth it.
Oh, absolutely. The base package with just essential items, I think, is $100 extra a month. And there's tons of automation. You can have SMS capabilities, so on and so forth. And Paul.
Redeem.
And
totally OBS is a long time coming, man. I should have done this a long time ago, but man, there's a million reasons why we are here now where we are. So the pandemic ain't a small part of that equation either, just like everybody else, right? We've had to roll some punches, but
this year overall is going to be huge. We said that at the beginning of the year. There are so many big things that are coming out this year.
Oh, I'm so excited.
And we're really excited to get all of those projects done.
I feel like we've been sleeping, but the whole time it's just like sausage churning.
Yeah, just basically building this huge snowball that's just going to be rolling downhill and collecting more and more and more, and getting it out to you guys is just super exciting. So
that's right. All right, very good. And that's all you had? Yes,
that's all I had. Yeah,
cool. Asher, did you have anything you want to say hi? Where's he at? There he is.
I'll say hi. I don't have anything productive to say though.
Yeah, very good.
Actually, well, I will say I hope that everyone was able to join. I realized we shared this through a bunch of events, and then we went live on the pages those events are from. And I'm going to blame Facebook for this one, but it's surprisingly difficult when you're on a page. Nowhere can you click to go to the page that the event was.
Nope. We're losing him.
We're losing him.
Okay.
Well, that's okay. That's a bummer, but we'll figure it out as we go. Maybe there is a way for me to
hopefully Freddie, you got here because
well, a number of people have joined, and then they can obviously watch this later. So, and it's like not required editing. That's how good we are. What do you want to say, Adam?
There was a question just came in right at the buzzer.
Lee.
Lee was asking, when a job is assigned to multiple techs, any way for both techs routes to fill on the schedule, basically adding the job to multiple routes. So the answer is you can add to multiple routes at a time. It might not be quite in the way you're envisioning because the system is built around routes in general. So if you have 2 trucks, route A is Joe and route B is me, you could make multiple appointments that are both tied to the same order. So they're both going to the same location, the same service site. They're doing some of the similar work, maybe, might be tasks, different things. But you could put 2 of those events on during the quick add process. You can schedule multiple appointments and that will handle that. If you're saying build an appointment and mention all the text on there and it will fill out the routes, it doesn't work like that. The route defaults are just that. When you assign a job to a route, the default technicians get added. But there's no other logic on that front in terms of, automatically creating multiple appointments just because it happens to see Joe or Adam on there.
Yeah, the appointment is the glue between the location, the order information, the account, and the technicians, and the resource allocation, which in a lot of times it's going to be the truck or the equipment on the truck. Right. And so if you get a resource stack right, then yeah. And then if you have to assign multiple resources to a job, because I know like Seeger does 2 vans for almost every single job they do in their carpet cleaning operation, which is, kind of unheard of, but those guys are in and out, right? It's like it's fast. So yeah, you got to schedule 2 appointments because the resources of each of those trucks need to be allocated properly. And the NEC does give you the ability to shift things around in emergency. So let's say halfway through the appointment, you need to pull resource A off and send them down to go do another job or, an emergency. Then you can do that. Just move that one appointment and then the allocation of the other appointment still is there. And hopefully all of the techs are logging in and out appropriately, which means all your time cards are still right. So that's how that works. But yes, Lee, thank you for the question.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your attention, everyone. And we're trying to keep these short. 40 minutes isn't too bad. And we'll see you next month. Until next time, leave your questions. Follow us on Facebook. We've got some Twitter stuff. We've got some, maybe not Twitter so much anymore. But Instagram, we're trying to do more LinkedIn stuff. If you're on LinkedIn, come say hi to us on LinkedIn. We're trying to get things going a little bit more there. So, all right. Bye-bye, guys. Have a great day.
Guys.